The Mesa Chamber of Commerce Inside Business Podcast brings you a unique view of Mesa through its vibrant business community and the subjects that are important. The podcast is produced in the Mesa Chamber of Commerce Media Studio, sponsored by the University of Phoenix. Our podcast is hosted by Mesa Chamber of Commerce CEO Sally Harrison. Please enjoy this episode of the Mesa Chamber Inside Business Podcast.
Hi, I'm Sally Harrison, the president of the Mesa Chamber of Commerce, and today in our podcast studio, I have a friend of the chamber and also one of the candidates that we have endorsed, my friend, Rich Adams. He is here to talk about, well, his candidacy, our endorsement, and why he's running for city council.
Well, thank you, and good morning, Sally.
Good morning.
And yes, I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course.
And I'm very honored to have the endorsement of the Mesa Chamber of Commerce. That's very much appreciated.
You bet.
Why am I running for city council? I would almost say it's a calling. I have been involved in the city in one form or another since the mid-'90s, after having gone through Mesa Leadership.
Yes.
Which is a wonderful program.
Thank you.
I don't want to say the year I graduated because it makes me sound even older than I am. But it's a wonderful program, and it led to many things. I remember, I think it was Mayor Willie Wong who encouraged all of us after graduation to get involved, volunteer for something in the city, and I did.
Yeah.
Got on the museum board when we were talking about the Arts Center, and then went to planning and zoning for 2.5 terms, and then just wrapped up, I want to say 16, maybe 14 years on the Economic Development Advisory Board. So it seemed in many ways just a logical next step. But I will tell you that about 18 months or so ago, when the early interests were starting to come to the surface of folks who were looking to run for council seats, I looked at District 1, and based on a number of things that I was aware of through my board service, I that's where that calling comes from. I saw the need to step up and offer the citizens an alternative. And by the way, at that time, I had not met Tim Meyer and didn't know he was also running. And what a wonderful guy he is. Yeah. I'm really pleased to have met him and get to know him. And
I got to know him through Mesa Leadership.
did you?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Yeah. And just a super guy, and he has blessed me with his endorsement after
That's
the
awesome.
primary. So.
Yeah, good.
But one of the other reasons I'm running is, for many years here in Mesa, I think we had what I would call common goals, but maybe different roads to get there. I'm a hiker and a mountain biker, and you can set off with some people and say, okay, this is our goal and this is where we're going, and maybe I'll take this trail, you take that trail. Different ways to get to the same place. I'm starting to see that we don't have that many common goals anymore as a community.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, the track has been jumped. So I think it's extremely important that we have, at a minimum, a balanced council.
Balanced is a really great word.
I like
That's
balance.
important, right?
I like it because extremes in any one direction or another are generally not good for a community.
Sure.
So that's, and the last thing I would add is I'm an equality guy. I'm not an equity guy. And when I see equity starting to creep into things, especially in our city government, I think that those of us who don't agree with equity need to step up and say no. And that's me.
All right. Well, why don't we talk about your priorities? Maybe give us your top 3 and why these are important to you.
Glad to. Public safety
should be important to everybody, right?
very, very important. Without a safe and secure community, without good fire and medical, employers aren't going to want to relocate here because they don't want their people, their employees and their families in an unsafe environment. I've grown up and raised my family in a safe community. We have a wonderful police department. We have a wonderful fire and medical.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that those things stay strong and in place and are well funded. And we need to make sure that our officers and our firefighters want to stay here because they're fairly compensated. And I've gotten to know some of these men and women through this campaign, and they have some questions and they have some concerns, and I'm happy to be their voice.
That's great.
Let's talk about transparency. It is more than a slogan. If we're going to dole out public money, your money, my money, tax money, then there has to be absolute transparency. The public checkbook is not something that should be used by elected officials or organizations funded by tax money for the whim of the executive director or the whim and the pet project of the elected official.
Mm-hmm.
We've done some things here in Mesa that are very nice, but I wonder if the average family of four, mom and dad both working,
Mm-hmm.
struggling to make ends meet when they go to the grocery store and the gas pump, really care about all the fancy things that we build with tax money.
Mm. Yeah,
We need to think about that.
sure.
But getting back to transparency, I think it's very important that when public money is involved, there be no question about where'd you spend it? What'd you spend it for? Was it spent wisely? And if someone, and that'll take me to, we need to protect whistleblowers. If somebody comes forward at their own risk and says, hey, I think this wasn't a good use of $60,000 of public money, that person be congratulated, rewarded, and protected, not the subject of some kind of a slander campaign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So those are kind of
All right.
my important things.
Well, those are important things. So, in a recent interview with one of the mayoral candidates, you were asked about Mesa's financial stability, obviously an important thing, and possible difficult changes that are coming ahead. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
I think I remember the interview, and I think I made reference to the Titanic as supposedly unsinkable, and the question was, did I think Mesa's economy was resilient enough to make it through a downturn? And I said, well, nothing can be completely resilient, nor was the Titanic unsinkable.
Right.
I think the experience that we all went through in the 2008 downturn, by the way, at the same time we were forming Gateway Bank, which is still today alive, well, and thriving.
Thriving is a great description of that bank.
Yes, and a very strong supporter of this chamber.
Yes,
Thank
they
goodness.
are very good.
We struck gold when we hired James Christensen. Thank you.
Little plug for our friend James Christensen
Yes.
at Gateway Bank. We love
Yes,
him.
there's a shout out, James.
He's my Arizona brother.
But I think that we have the experience to know how to deal with these things,
Mm-hmm.
and to assume that the next 5 to 10 years bring nothing but good times and high profits and plenty of revenue, I think is a little naive. Things go in cycles,
Mm-hmm.
and we're probably overdue for one.
Yeah.
So I think the thing we need to focus on when that happens, again, we need to protect our small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
We do that in a number of ways, and one of the best ways is get out of their way.
Yeah.
Let's get out of the way with overregulation. Let's not make it hard to start a business or difficult for someone to, a good friend of mine owns a body shop, not in my district, but he decided to improve his property by putting up an enclosure around his dumpsters that are picked up by a private company,
Yeah.
by the way. And somehow or another, this caught the attention of code compliance or somebody, and they literally wanted him to tear them down. He had an architect design them. I went out and looked at him because I thought, well, maybe the guy's just making a lot of noise.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was ridiculous. We need to not get so focused on pushing paper and policy and procedure when it hampers our small businesses.
I believe we have another candidate that's running, and he's talking a lot about facilitate, don't regulate. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
there's
I've heard that.
there are rules in place, right? But I think that sometimes there's other ways to follow the rules rather than just looking at the book going, well, page 3 says this.
Exactly.
And, we can figure out how to make it a little bit easier, streamline things a little bit more, and get those businesses working.
Yeah, operate it like a business. Okay, our goal is to serve our customers, make a profit, save money,
Yeah.
and get things done efficiently.
Yeah, important things. So let's talk about the general plan. How do you feel the 2050 general plan that was recently approved by council and is put on the November ballot? How do you think that's going to play out?
Well, I have no reason to think that it won't pass. I don't think it's perfect. It certainly was put together in the light of day.
Well, they certainly asked a lot of people for input.
Yep.
More than I remember hearing about in the past.
Yes.
And hopefully people who don't understand what some of those questions are about are asking questions of people who do understand and can help them make informed decisions.
I'm glad you said that, because a long time ago, a very wise man who was my mentor when I first sat on planning and zoning, Mr. Marty Whalen, told me, he said, "Rich, staff will never lie to you, but you need to know how to ask the question." And that's key.
Yeah.
You need to know how to ask the question and the follow-up if necessary. So I think the process was conducted as it has every 10 years, probably better than before, more in the light of day. But at the same time, when these boards and commissions are appointed, you hope that they're appointed in a nonpartisan way that represents the demographic of the community. And if that's the case, then you probably get a pretty good plan.
Yeah.
So.
Good. Well, what's your position on renewable energy and water conservation? Pretty important things for Mesa.
I think so, especially water.
Yes.
As a lifetime conservative, and I make no apologies for that, I would point out that one of the greatest conservationists that I'm aware of was a fellow named Theodore Roosevelt, over 100 years ago, who's kind of considered by some as the father of conservation.
Okay.
Did a lot in water, did a lot in national parks. So I think people of my mindset have always seen conservation, renewable resources, and looking for ways to minimize waste is important, and I think those are important. I think it's great that the city is looking at electric vehicles. I think whenever something new comes out, you don't want to just jump in 100%. You get in a little bit, see how it works. I can tell you I've learned from my very good friends at the United Mesa Firefighters that most of the firefighters would prefer an electric engine because the engineer doesn't have to stand for 3 or 4 hours while the crew fights a fire in diesel exhaust fumes.
Right.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, it's a whole health piece at that point.
Yep, it sure is.
Yeah.
It sure is. So I'm all for looking for ways to conserve water, generate power more efficiently, use less fossil fuel, as long as power needs to be reliable and affordable. Sustainable comes after those two things, because we do want the lights to go on.
I think that's important to everybody, right?
Yep.
So can you describe the approach you take if elected to address economic development in our community? Maybe talk about current efforts and if you feel like those efforts are working. If not, what would you change?
Sure. My simple answer is I wouldn't change much. I had the privilege of serving on the Economic Development Advisory Board during the entire tenure that Bill Jibgeniak served as our Economic Development Director. And Bill made a sea change here in Mesa in the way we used to do it to what we have today. So I wouldn't change much. I think that what's called for today is, I think it's right that we take another look at retail. We should probably take another look at retail.
Yep, it's time.
Yep. Malls are dying, so what comes after that? And we obviously rely on transaction privilege tax, or sales tax as most people call it, very much so. So we need to focus on where's retail going.
Yeah.
And
we have a lot of leakage.
Yes, we want to.
A lot of people going to other cities.
Let's buy the car here, not drive to Buckeye or whatever.
Yeah, well, and eat here and spend our money here.
Yeah, so I think we need to And we need to support our new economic development director, Jay O'Donnell.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's still new in the saddle, and you know, had many years with Bill.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she knows what to do.
Great. Well, what do you see as the biggest opportunity facing your district?
Well, I'm probably going to go with more than one, but I'll
Okay.
be quick. We need to manage infill.
Yeah.
There isn't a whole lot of vacant dirt in District 1, and there's going to be an infill project here and there that may not make the surrounding neighbors very happy. And I'm really big on making sure we don't drop things into small parcels next to people who have lived somewhere for 30 or 40 years that they absolutely don't want there.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be respectful of that. And I think I had a great conversation with Jeff Blanford. And, you know, my first contact with him was in the mid-'80s.
Blanford Homes.
Blanford Homes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, when he was just starting out.
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned is he and I both dropped in Mesa about the same time in the
Okay.
early 60s. Yeah. And he gets that.
Mm-hmm.
He gets that. And in fact, he invited me. He says, call me. You know, we get an issue to talk about. And I'm going to. I think Lehigh needs to be protected. I
Yeah.
heard that loud and clear. That is a gem. It is unique unto itself, and I'm committed to protecting Lehigh,
Good.
just as it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the people want.
Mm-hmm.
I think that not only in District 1, but in the citywide, we need to find some ways to address homelessness. We have rising evictions, we have rising foreclosures. Not everybody who's on the street wants to be there. Granted, there's that small faction that is there for whatever reason, but
Sure.
we're starting to see families on the street. And I don't think throwing more and more tax money at it is the solution.
Mm-hmm.
I've met some wonderful people through this campaign, and one gentleman, I don't think he'd mind me mentioning his name, David Scott, with
Meadows Bank.
Meadows Bank, thank you,
Mm-hmm.
wants to get involved and look for solutions.
Yes, he does.
David reached out to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he's open. Ted Taylor at Family Promise, another guy, I know him through Rotary.
Mm-hmm.
These folks are looking for solutions, sometimes in the faith-based community, sometimes through community organizations. I think you can always get more done if you go to those sectors than you go to the government.
Oh, yeah.
Government doesn't know how to do anything efficiently. So I think we need, and I think we need to look at communities that have either intentionally or stumbled upon solutions that are working.
Mm-hmm.
Greensboro, North Carolina has a working program in the winter called the pallet houses.
Mm.
And it's worth taking a look at. And I'm sure there are other cities around the country that are actually making progress.
Mm-hmm.
So those are, and we have to support small businesses, we've talked about.
Thank you. Yes, we do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Through our chamber.
Through our chamber, yes. Yeah. Well, I've heard you say that the city should, quote, stay in its lane. What do you mean by that?
I mean, when we have to make decisions, we take a look at our charter. It's sort of like it's our roadmap. It's our constitution. It says
Mm-hmm.
what we as a council should and shouldn't do. And I think we have jumped that track in the last years. And I think it's time to get back to the basics.
Mm-hmm.
What does it say we're supposed to do? And I don't think there's nothing wrong with dreaming big, but at the same time, what are the basic things we are charged to do?
Mm-hmm.
And let's focus on those.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not do things that are, you know, the strict constructionist or the broad constructionist of any document. Well, you know, the broad constructionist says, well, we could probably do this and not really violate anything. Well, let's focus on doing what we know we should do.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
I
good.
I think that's important.
Well, Rich, you say you are not a politician.
No.
So, in the last 10 months, since you've been out there on the campaign trail, what have you learned? What's the most important or maybe surprising thing that you've learned as your campaign has kind of been unfolding for not being a politician? What surprises you?
What surprises me?
Yeah.
I think the number of people who really want to get involved, to help, to make a difference, and improve things.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that they all agree on how it should be done.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some very interesting conversations with various groups and come away realizing I never thought about it that way before.
Mm-hmm.
I had a great conversation with Phil Austin's Latino business group,
Mm-hmm.
and they asked some questions that really put me to thinking, wow, I need to remember to put myself in other people's shoes, because there's one thing to say, well, yes, I understand, but you know what, I can't understand because I didn't walk in those shoes.
Sure.
So I think the number of people who really want to get involved and help,
Mm-hmm.
what they need is some leadership and direction. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you got 10 people going in 10 different directions, or you can focus them. We want to achieve this. But if we don't all agree on what it is, you know, ideas and debate are great. Some of the best solutions come from when ideas are annealed in the furnace of debate and they come out as something that we can all live with.
Mm-hmm.
Compromise.
Yeah.
You got to have compromise, because if I get it all my way, what about your way?
Sure.
Everybody doesn't have to win and everybody doesn't have to lose. So I think this has been an eye-opener. And whether, you know, win or lose, doesn't matter. It will change the way I approach working on problems where I can offer myself and my time.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I appreciate it. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Other than just to once again say I appreciate the support from the Chamber. I appreciate what the Chamber does. And that, whether or not the Chamber had chosen through its board of directors to endorse my candidacy or not, I think this is a great Chamber.
We appreciate that.
What you've done to grow it in the time that I know has just been outstanding.
It's a little bit of a different chamber than when I started working here 16 years ago.
Not your ordinary chamber, not your ordinary candidate.
And yeah, not the old boys club that it used to be.
There you go.
I think we've worked hard to really identify the needs of membership and the needs of the community and try and blend that. We probably do some different things in other chambers, and I'm proud of that piece.
Absolutely.
We've got a really great staff that is very creative and caring, and it's a great combination.
Before we close, tell us about what you're going to do in a few weeks.
I'm assuming that you're talking about the thing that you said you would never do.
That's right.
In your entire life. Well, yeah, so we have a great relationship with Mesa Police Department, right? We have for PD and fire, and I'm proud of that. We've worked hard to help them and to help tell their story and just be good partners. They asked if they could come and visit with myself and Terry, and I thought, and I knew it was about an event that they support for Special Olympics, and I assumed that they wanted us to promote the event and talk about, you know, their fundraising, and so that's where my head was at. I didn't realize that they were actually asking us to participate in the event until about 20 minutes into the conversation, when it dawned on me what they were actually asking. So basically, bottom line is, Terry and I will be rappelling down Cityscape, which is 27 or 28 floors, with Terry's son, who's a police officer. So she and Daniel will rappel together, and I will be rappelling with Assistant Chief Ed Wessing. So we did a little practice run. I said, now that I've committed without knowing what I was committing to, is there a shorter building we can practice on? And they're like, well, we'll get SWAT involved. And so we practiced.
Go out to the fire.
We went out to the training facility, and that's 7 floors. So that was not 28 floors, but it gave us at least a little bit more comfort knowing kind of the process and what's going to happen. So I believe it's November 16th in downtown Phoenix.
I'll be firmly on the ground watching.
Well, I think there will be some of our family and friends. PD and Fire will be there. It'll be a fun morning. I know there's a lot of people that will participate, but it is a fundraiser for Special Olympics, which is great, and it's just a new experience for us. So
Indeed.
Bob has basically said he's not sure he's coming because he doesn't know he can even watch. So we'll leave it at that. But yes, I think when you have an opportunity to do things in your community, maybe not everybody can do something like this or would choose to do it, but to say yes to being part of your community, it involves a lot of things, right? And this just happens to be one of them. Probably won't repeat this a whole lot.
Well, my hat's off to you, because I chickened out on the training tower when I went through Fire Academy. So
that's all good. But thank you. Thanks for going through our process. I know that it takes time. The chamber has a good government committee that you obviously got to interview with. We put a lot of effort into making sure that committee that meets with everybody, goes through all of the candidate surveys, the questionnaires that we do, the interviews, and then they make a recommendation to our board. I feel very comfortable that it's a thorough, fair, and complete process before the board makes a final determination and a vote. So thanks for going through the process and making the time to do it, because it's important for us, so we feel good about it.
Happy to.
Well, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, don't forget to review all of our endorsements on the Chamber website.
This has been a Mesa Chamber of Commerce Inside Business podcast. You can find all podcast episodes at iTunes, Spotify, or your own favorite podcast website. You can also find them online at mesachamber.org. Content of this podcast is copyright the Mesa Chamber of Commerce, unless otherwise noted.